Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me here at the Outlook 2020 conference. And I would also just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and also emerging. It is raining in the Central West today, so hallelujah for that. Wonderful to see some rain falling. I live just outside of Orange, and we've had some good falls, not so much in Orange recently, but certainly I was at Gulgong on the weekend, and it's looking very green out there in Wellington as well. So terrific to see that happening, and has just lifted everyone's spirits just that little bit more. It has been a very difficult time for us in country Australia recently, not only with the devastating impacts of the drought, but also these bushfires as well. And out in our neck of the woods, we've had the fires come through from Clarence and Dargan up near Lithgow, and they basically swept up the Castlereagh Highway, up past the Capertee Valley and out past Rylestone and almost into the Bylong Valley. So about 600 rural properties affected out there. So on top of drought and farmers dealing with drought, many of them were out fighting fires, and obviously a huge task in recovering from that. We've got a lot of fencing down out there and we've got emergency feed coming in, although hopefully we can ease off on that now. But so difficult and testing times. But it is a great pleasure to join you here today and to talk about how we can best support the agriculture sector in this country and how we can reach the target of $100 billion in farm output by 2030. And I'm a little bit old-fashioned in terms of my outlook on things, and I think the wealth of the country's got to be based on what we can make and what we can grow and what we can sell. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way, and that's why we've got to be supporting agriculture and agricultural production and those industries that help us help Australia and our regions get that competitive advantage, including in fields such as food processing, which is pretty important in my neck of the woods. We make the Chico roll out in Bathurst, if you didn't know that. So food processing, very close to our hearts. We also make Nutella and Tic Tacs out at Lithgow as well. But one of the ways that we can support agriculture and agricultural production is through trade and investment. We've seen how vital that is during this recent drought, and as all of you here would know, one of the important factors that has sustained agriculture through this really difficult dry time has been that stock prices have held up, and so that when farmers have had to sell, they haven't had to sell stock for a pittance or worse, shoot them. And so that's why trade and investment and free trade agreements is really so very important. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges facing Australia and agriculture, and one of them at the forefront of everyone's minds at the moment is obviously the coronavirus. That's going to be a huge challenge. I was told today, just before I came on, that Woolies is apparently rationing people in buying toilet paper. You can only buy 4 packs of it now, apparently. Why you'd want to stockpile that, I'm not too sure. You know, I probably would have gone for tinned foods or something like that. But that just gives you an idea of the growing sense of alarm and panic. And we're obviously taking that very seriously in government and making the necessary preparations. But it's a reaction to, I think, people wanting to feel like they're doing something in the face of imminent danger. And as you heard earlier, I did live in Hong Kong for a while, and in typhoon season, whenever there was a typhoon off the coast, people would rush into the supermarkets and just buy stuff. It didn't matter what it was. It's a very kind of human reaction, I think, to wanting to take some sort of measures in the face of impending danger. So the health of Australians is certainly our priority. And we had a briefing on the coronavirus yesterday from the relevant health officials. It is going to be, it's a significant issue for us. I think the idea is to do whatever we can to slow it down and getting into Australia, because what we don't want to see is our health facilities overwhelmed with this issue. By far the majority of cases are mild, including those amongst children. But having said that, it is a very serious issue, and so I think the Prime Minister's been out on the front foot, and rightly so. You've seen it. You've seen it with the panic buying. People are very concerned about it, and it is going to take a hit on the bottom line. So we've got the budget coming up soon, and we're just going to have to wait and see what the impact of all of this is. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of stimulus packages. I remember the Rudd money days, which, I don't know, to me, there are probably better ways of doing it than that. Where I was in Orange, where all of that was going on, I saw a lot of people buying big screen TVs at Kmart. You spoke to the bottle shop owners and they were pretty happy because there was a lot of buying going on. But in terms of actually doing something lasting to support the economy, I think there are better ways to do it. So obviously we've got the drought that we're dealing with as well. It's going to take some time for farms and farmers to get back on their feet, and also farm-related businesses. And restocking is going to be a big one, as we all know. So that's one of the big challenges that the sector faces. In terms of trade, we've got challenges there as well. Obviously, the continuing tensions between the United States and China, they have wide-ranging impacts upon our region. And the Phase 1 deal is a step in the right direction in that regard, and does offer opportunity for improved access for Australian agricultural products to China. However, as the Trade Minister Simon Birmingham has said, it's more of a truce at this point than a resolution of the tensions. So we're going to be watching that one very closely. And then in the meantime, we're just very focused on making sure Australians and Australian businesses are competing on a level playing field. For example, the World Trade Organization, which is the international body responsible for the rules of global trade, it's being tested, and put quite simply, without a functioning global trade dispute settlement system, we risk not being able to compete on that level playing field. And if we can't rely on global trading rules, we can't adequately protect the interests of Australian farmers and Australian businesses. So Australia has been a leading voice, working with other WTO members to find a way forward, and we'll continue to do that. But taken together, these challenges, they paint a troubling picture for the global economy, a challenging one. But I think we as Australians tend to face these challenges with optimism, and it's just part of who we are as Australians, and we will get through them. We've endured a lot in the past, so despite the challenges, there are also opportunities out there, and we're just committed to working with the relevant sectors like agriculture to get through it. And we're doing this also by implementing an ambitious free trade agreement agenda. And in just 5 years, FTAs have increased from covering 26% of Australia's two-way trade to covering roughly 70% of our trade today. And we're looking to increase this to around 90% by 2022, with new trade deals finalised with Hong Kong and Peru, and negotiations currently underway with the European Union. And whenever the UK is ready to start their negotiations for a trade deal, we'll be up for that as well. The recently concluded Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement will create new opportunities as well for Australian businesses. And by some estimates, Indonesia is on track to be the world's 5th largest economy by 2030. And with this deal, which we have secured and which Indonesia is in the process of ratifying, 99% of Australian goods exports by value to Indonesia will enter duty-free or under significantly improved preferential agreements. So it's a really important one for us. And the government's working to open up trade in our region, including through the TPP 11, that's the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. And we're also improving Australia's economic resilience through market diversification. And Minister Birmingham's visit to India last month made good headway on this and was a very successful visit. So the government's agenda is to secure new and better access to markets, and it is paying dividends for Australian services, manufacturers, and also, most importantly, our primary producers. So, for example, the TPP 11 has eliminated more than 98% of tariffs in this free trade area, with more reductions in Japan's tariffs on beef, which is great news for our cattle farmers. The Indonesia-Australia Agreement, or IACPA, will be a major boost for Australian farmers looking to export live cattle, frozen beef, sheep meat, feed grains, citrus, carrots, potatoes, and also dairy. And IACPA will provide tariff-free access for our grain growers to export 500,000 tonnes of feed grains each year, and tariff-free access to export up to 575,000 live male cattle from the start of the agreement, rising to 700,000 by the 6th year. So pretty significant boost. And under the new Peru FTA, we've negotiated duty-free access for 30,000 tonnes of Australian sugar. So we're working to increase options for Australian exporters by negotiating new market access and also addressing non-tariff barriers. This is a big one for our area. So you folks out here from the Central West will know that for a long time, our cherry growers haven't been able to get our goods to market because of the fruit fly issue. And so our growers were forced to put our cherries into cold storage for many weeks before they could actually get into a foreign market. And of course, by the time we actually got them there, they were well past their prime. And so we've been working with our trading partners to break down those non-tariff barriers by working out agreements to get our cherries processed through irradiation or methyl bromide fumigation. And we made those breakthroughs in about 2017, and this year, or the last cherry season, so through December and January, for the first time in our area, we've actually seen an upsurge in export interest, which is really important because it gets our growers away from having to rely on the pricing set by the big supermarkets, for example. It's something that our growers have been complaining about for a long time. So in our area in the Central West, we used to have hundreds of orchards out there. Now we're down to about 30. But because we've been able to break down these non-tariff barriers, for the first time, you're actually seeing farmers planting cherry trees again because they can see a future in it, and you can see their kids taking an interest in it. They want to get into cherries as well. So this is how important it is. This is not just an abstract notion. This is delivering real results on the ground, tangible results. China is now one of Australia's most important export destinations for cherries, with exports totalling $29 million in 2019. And before we were able to work these deals through, the way you got your cherries into China was through the grey market, through Hong Kong. But we don't have to do that anymore, which is great news. So Australia is also advocating for strong and effective global rules on trade. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to ensure that the World Trade Organization is working effectively. It's a long way from the orchards of orange to the negotiating rooms of Geneva, but what happens at the WTO matters to all of our communities, particularly our country communities. So as coordinator of the Cairns Group, we're playing a leading role in the WTO to drive reform efforts on global agriculture and also tackle the issue of subsidies. And left unchecked, we estimate that global agricultural subsidies could reach $2 trillion by 2030. Even moderate use of these projected increases would impact our agricultural export competitiveness. So we're building support for a new WTO framework that would cap and reduce these global subsidies by at least half by 2030. We're also working within the existing rules to defend and advance Australia's agricultural interests, including through our disputes with respect to Canadian wine measures and India's sugar subsidies. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned at the outset, we've got some big challenges facing us in terms of agriculture and the agricultural outlook, but we can get through them. And we're very clear-eyed about the risks, but also about the opportunities as well, and we really need to be pursuing those opportunities. I'd like to thank ABARES for the work that they've been doing over so many years. It's vital work for the future of not only Australia, but in particular our country communities. I wanted to also thank everyone here for the work that you're doing in your own communities and your own organisations to support not only agriculture and fisheries and our country and regional communities, but also you're supporting the future prosperity of Australia. So what you all do makes a huge difference as well. So I wish you well for the rest of the conference, and I look forward to a long association with ABARES going into the future. Thanks for having me, folks.